Well, hello. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I am super excited. I know I always say that, but I am here with the author of Happiness. I'm so excited about this. Shawn, please tell him what the fuck's going on.
Well, my name is Shawn, as you said, and I'm the author of Fuck Happiness as well as other books. And I'm a psychotherapist working outside of Chicago. And so my life is pretty much revolves around helping people and trying to get them to live their best lives.
Nice. Okay, so tell me about this. I know you have several books and we'll talk about it, but tell me about this one. The title is like, I'm going crazy with it. So yeah, tell me about that.
So that's a fun story. And this will also let you know that I'm human. And as a psychotherapist, I also struggle like everyone else in the world. So about 2 years ago, I just finished my book tour for Habits of Successful People, my previous book. And I was thinking, well, what's next for me? And I was really struggling, like, what's going to be the next thing? And then I was thinking, wait a minute, am I happy? And I couldn't answer that question. I was like, it's such a simple question. Am I happy? And I couldn't answer that. And then it really perplexed me because then I was like, well, I wonder if my patients are happy. Am I making them any happier? So I had this really existential moment. So it's kind of funny. So what I did is I typed in happiness into the almighty Google to try to find out what the answer is for happiness, right? Because what's a psychotherapist going to do, right? He's going to go to the almighty Google, and if that doesn't have the answer, no one will. And of course, there's, millions upon millions of pages. But this really cool thing happened. I think it was very serendipitous. This movie popped up called Hector and the Search for Happiness. And I start reading what it's about. And it's about a psychotherapist who's questioning his happiness. And I said, I know. So I'm like, what is going on here? Like, is this like some divine intervention or what is going on? I don't understand. So I read the second byline of the movie and it says, Hector questions whether he makes his patients happy or not. And I said, oh my God, I got to watch this movie. So right away, my happiness journey started with watching this movie. And I won't go into detail about the movie because I think your listeners should really check out the movie. But afterwards, I was elated. I was super happy, or so I thought. And I was like jumping up and down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know what I need to do. I need to write a book about happiness. And so right away that night, I open my laptop. I start with the title page and I type working title happiness. And then I just proceed. So I spend a year studying happiness and writing a book about it. At the end of the year, I print it out. So I'm going to take my pen and kind of write in the margins of like, maybe I could, tighten this up a little bit or expand on it before I send it to my editor. And I can't even get through the first chapter and I'm just sick to my stomach. I'm like, I have this gut instinct that I have it all wrong. It's not about happiness. So I was so frustrated that I wrote fuck across the top of the manuscript, threw it down on my desk, walked away, got a sparkling water, came back, looked at it, and I go, oh my God, that's the answer. Fuck happiness. I was like, you know what? It's totally not about happiness. In fact, I thought about Hector and the search for happiness, and it was really Hector was on a search for meaningfulness. It wasn't about
Mm,
happiness. He was searching for meaningfulness. So I was like, okay, I just spent a year of my life studying happiness, so I could definitely tear it apart, So I went into kind of lawyer mode and went in and looked at everything that's wrong about chasing happiness. And I come to the conclusion that it's all about searching for meaningfulness. And that's where the title came about. So I wasn't deliberately trying to be provocative. It just happened out of my frustration and actual failure with the first attempt at the book. So,
I love it.
so life lessons, right? Like meaningfulness, sometimes it comes from a struggle,
That's right.
and here we are.
Wow. I mean, I love it. This is the first time I get to curse. So that's why I got like so into it because I never get the opportunity, right? So, okay. So the book is about finding the meaning, like not finding happiness. So what you're saying is that should be the goal.
Absolutely. It's basically says that happiness is detrimental to finding meaningfulness in life. And where that comes from is, so right now we have this huge problem with, and we have had it for years, is everyone asking themselves, why am I not as happy as everyone else? And where does this come from? Well, right now it comes from advertisers, right? These slick weasels, they weave these magical tales about how buying their goods and services will make our lives so much better. And we will then therefore be happy. And
Mm.
nothing can be further from the truth. And then we have the second thing, right? Which is this phenomenon from the last 20 years, and that's social media, which is, I'm not knocking social media. Here we are on social media, and we're doing this show, and that's social media. So that's awesome. It's a great use of it. But the problem with that is people are looking at these curated moments of happiness, and they're not really getting to have the true experience of what life is about. And that's about finding meaningfulness. It's not about the possessions. It's not about posting pictures about your sports car or the big house or the pretend family photo where you're all getting along for 3 seconds before you start fighting.
They like each other,
right? Because listen, if I would believe, at least from my experience, and maybe it's just my family, but I visited other families during the holidays, and there is some wonderful moments, but there's also some darn not so friendly, not fun moments where if we were to post those as well, people would be like, oh, okay, so my life is normal. Okay, I get it. But they only see the picture perfect where everyone's in the matching pajama pants and, or whatever the theme socks are for the year.
And
but
as soon as
really
they take a picture, they're
finding
fighting.
meaningfulness.
Got it. I like it. I like it because, so what did you find in all that research? I'm interested, like in all that research about happiness, what does it say the meaning is? Because, now like when I looked at this cover, do I really know what happiness is? I don't know. I have no idea. What does it say? What did you find?
Well, happiness is fleeting. So there's this thing called the hedonic treadmill, and it's a psychological phenomenon where we adapt to positive or negative life events and eventually return to our baseline level of happiness. So what does this mean? It means most of us are consumers and we get on this treadmill, right? We buy things to try to make ourselves happy, and it's very temporary. So what the hedonic treadmill says is that no matter what you do, so you buy that fancy car, that sporty car that you get to show off on, you get to hold your $100 bills next to it and, look like a, major player. And before you even make that first car payment, you're back to your baseline level of happiness before you purchased it. So it's very fleeting. That's the one thing I could say about happiness. It's very fleeting. And I will say this as well, is like, I'm not anti-happiness. Like, listen, my daughter comes up and gives me a hug. That makes me happy, but it also has meaningfulness as well, right? Or like, give me some ice cream. I'm a really happy person, give me some ice cream. I'm happy, right? It's very fleeting though. Where's the meaning in that, right? So we have to be very careful.
Now that you mention it, it is, you don't think about these things though, as a human looking for happiness. That even when you find it, if you think about it, there was one time I wanted the career I have, but now that you're there, it's like, I don't want to get up and go. It's not what it was when I didn't have it. So great point. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the other thing is people have this misconception that to have a great life, it's going to be painless. And that nothing's further from the truth. Like, we have to accept the good and the bad, the ups and the downs, the hills and the valleys. It's not always hitting the apex of the mountain that we just climbed. There's a downside to that, and there's a valley, and it's what we make of it. So that's where, our mind really comes into the fact is like how we perceive where we're at and what we're doing. And with meaningfulness, we can get through really, really rough times. I can give a perfect example. Of course, this is hundreds of years ago, but you look at Michelangelo, the painter of the Sistine Chapel. He did not want this job. He was 68 foot in the air. He was on a rickety scaffolding. So, they didn't have like modern day scaffolding. They were just putting together a bunch of rickety boards and good luck, climb up, 7 stories. This guy was painting on his back for 4 years. And this was like 1508. He's painting by candlelight at times. He's got plaster and paint dripping in his eyes. He was completely miserable. In fact, we know this because he wrote a poem about it, and he also wrote a friend about it, and the letter still exists. But what came out of that is this really meaningful masterpiece, the Sistine Chapel, right? So it's like all things are not going to be happy. So like, if you were to ask, if we can go back in time and ask Michelangelo, are you happy today going to work? Hell no, he wasn't happy.
He said no.
I was probably pissed off, most of the time, because Pope Julius II ordered him to do the job. He didn't want the job. But he wound up finding meaningfulness. How? Because it supported his belief in God. It supported his belief in creativity. It gave him an opportunity to have something that has legacy, right? So we talk about the difference between happiness and meaningfulness is meaningfulness will transcend time. It will last. And I can give you a funny example of how that works if you want. A really simple way I always explain it to people is I use a pizza as a metaphor. So imagine happiness is this. You order a pizza, it shows up at your door in 30 minutes or less. It's hot. The cheese looks great. It tastes great. You consume it. You're happy. But 30 minutes later, you're wondering what's for dessert and what's on Netflix. Very fleeting. Not going
Very.
to change your life, right? Let's take the same pizza scenario. Surround yourself with really good friends, your partner, wife, spouse, whatever it is, people that you really care about, and share meaningful conversation. Lift each other up. You will remember that a day later, a week later, a month later, a year later, maybe even 10 years later. You might not remember the date, but you will remember how they made you feel, and you will remember how you made them feel. That's
I
meaningfulness. Again, it transcends time. That pizza, maybe if you order it again, you'll be like, hey, they did a great job. I'll order from them. But there's no deep meaning to it.
They won't do anything for you. I love that example, actually. Yeah, I love that example. And I like that you talk about the pain of things, right? Because I have found my meaning from pain, and it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying. And is that what most humans, how it works for most humans?
Yeah. So I'm not telling people to rush into pain, but what I'm
Sure,
saying
of
is,
course. Let's figure that out.
but let's just think about another simple scenarios like working out or being physically fit, right? It's not fun. I mean, some people love it, but most people do not. Like I do have some friends who are like, I love it. This is my zone. Like, I'm like, great for you. Like, good luck with that. For me, it's arduous, it's time consuming, it's painful, but the results are worthwhile. So there is meaning in the sense that I'm going to get longevity out of my health. I tend to feel better because I get endorphins released when I work out, and this helps me and it keeps my spirits up and stuff like that. But if I was to work out only based on happiness, forget it. I'm never walking out that front door, and I'm never walking through the door of the gym because I'm not going to get happiness from that. But if it's meaningful, which again, my personal health is very meaningful to me, right? Our two greatest commodities are time and health.
That's
If we
right.
don't have time, we have nothing. If we don't have our health, we don't have much going for us either. And we probably don't have a lot of time. So it's really important in that regard to look at stuff like that, that the journey is maybe have ups and downs, but make the most of it. And again, I'm not painting a thing of doom and gloom as like, you must suffer to find
Yeah,
meaningfulness.
no,
Like,
no, I
no,
got you.
listen, like there's people who created companies and it's like, they created it, they got an IPO, they became millionaires or billionaires. It's like, they didn't get any regulation problems. They're living life. Like, maybe it wasn't painful. I don't know, but I assume there's some pain in that process. There's
I
sleepless
think, I
nights or
think, I think it comes. I don't know. I think pain is like you said. Don't run towards it, but also, yeah, I think you could find a lot within there. So let me ask you this, because you are a counselor, which I like the counseling industry a lot. Counselors changed my life. So let me ask you this. If you can give one tip, and I know that's hard and, it depends on the person. If you could give one tip for a person to get on the road to find meaning in their lives, what would you say?
find out who your authentic self is.
Mm,
And that's a hard thing. And it's not easy. And we have a lot of people who don't know who they are. They think they know who they are, but they're not living the narrative that they should probably be living to make themselves have a meaningful life. So where does this stem from? Well, from a young age, we were lined up at school, told to walk in a certain way, where to sit, how to
all right.
sit, raise your hand, don't do this, do that. And then the next thing we're told is not how to think, but what to think. So when we walk out of school, we're already little robots where we're losing our identity because this structure was meant to create factory workers, right? Back in the day, that's what the system was
That's
set up
right.
for. And we're still teaching the same mannerisms. So we're already set up that way. And and I'm not bashing parents because it's the hardest job in the world. I can tell you, being a parent, we'd all try our best. I like to think everyone tries their best, but even that, we walk away sometimes damaging our kids. How so? Well, we say this kid is the smart one, or this one is the dumb one, or this one's not as athletic as that one. So this also then skews the narrative and the perception that kid has of themselves, which can last for years. It might be one instant where you say like, why can't you be more like your brother or you're like your sister? And
Right.
that could affect that kid the rest of their life.
Forever.
So what happens is, so people don't know who they are authentically are. So they think, well, I'm not the smart one, so I'm not going to take the chances I'm not going to apply for the job. I'm not going to go to school or trade school, or I'm not going to try to open my own business because I'm not smart enough. So it goes back to, who are you? So for most of my, clients, I tell them, I want you to write down who you are. And they usually write like, oh, I'm a doctor, or I'm a student, or I'm
You're like, that's not what I
I'm a
mean.
coffee barista, or whatever it is. Right. And I'm like, no, who are you? Like, what are your core beliefs? Like, what are your goals? And so I have them break down, a goals list is a really great thing of trying to find out who you are. Look at what your goals are. And then after you write your goals, look at why you're choosing these goals. Are these still goals that are based on the expectations that were put on you? Because I have clients I actually have a client in the past who was a doctor, and they were like, I'm not happy. I'm
That's
like,
not
oh
what
my
I
God.
wanted.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like you just went to like 13 years of school or something like that, or some large amount of school. And because, their grandpa was a doctor, dad was a doctor, mom's a doctor, aunt's a nurse.
Freaking brain. That's what
Yeah.
you,
So,
that's
and
what it's
then they
supposed to
said to
be.
themselves, I'm not living they didn't say authentic, but they say, I'm not living my own life. I'm still living like I'm a child under my parents. And this is not fulfilling for me. I would rather be kayaking down the Colorado River.
Write a book, or I
Yeah, or
got you.
something, right? And it's like, that's not the norm, but this has happened a lot with people where they are in a career because they were told that's what they should be. They think that's what they should be, or they think that's what the status quo, again, going back to social media and the invisible puppeteers of our life, which is social norms of what's the
Right.
expectation, right? Because what do we put value on in this world? It's like most people, are probably like, um, hey, Shawn, what do you do for a living? How much money do you make? And that shows my value, right? And then they don't say like, are you a good human being? Are you
Do
a
you want
good
pizza?
parent?
Yeah, none
Are
of
you a
that.
reliable friend? Are you a hard worker? Do you have something to offer society? They don't know. It's always, we look at, and we only put people on magazine covers often who are extremely rich or have a job title that it's going to impress everybody. And I say, live your own life and don't chase that stuff. If it happens, great. Money's a great tool. I'm not knocking it. Like if people want to mail me money right now, have at it. I will take all, just forward that to me. Okay. Make sure you forward it to me. I'll give you a cut
Yeah.
of it. But, they don't have, it's a great tool, but it shouldn't be your only motivation. And that's where, again, going back to authenticity is what really is the best use of your life. And most people don't think about that. So I have 20-year-olds struggling with it, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds. I have people going into
Yeah,
retirement and go, I still don't feel I've lived my authentic life. So
man,
that's,
and it's difficult. You're right. When you started talking about being authentic, that's a difficult. Now that you're talking, that it's a difficult thing to do, to look at yourself that way and find that truth. Because look at that doctor, all these years of education, to stand up and say that was all wrong, I got to start over. It's like, it makes people continue the lie, right? Because
yeah, of
why am I
course.
I don't want. So what would you tell that person that's standing there, well, you've told them, that is sitting there and go and realize that this isn't what I want to do, but they're 40, 50 years old? What would you tell them to take that risk and go into that truth?
I always say, trust your gut. Our gut instinct is so
Mm.
valuable. It's a primitive thing that's still around, and there's a reason why, because it really is a great barometer for what feels right with us. Try to not make an emotional decision, but, really think about it, make a logical, and also use your gut, what it tells you. For those people, again, I start very simple, like, listen, tell me what your core beliefs are, because that's going to be your roadmap. It's like if I said like, hey, we're going to go on vacation next week, and you say, oh, that's awesome. Where are we going? I don't know. Well, then how are we going to get there? We
Where are
can't
you
get to
going?
we can't go to get to the destination if we don't know where we're going. So what are your core beliefs? Because you're going to align with those. Those are really important. If God and servitude and other things are important to you, well, that should guide your life. If it's something else, well, then those should guide your life. And then go from there is then write your, short-term and long-term goals. And then we could start to say, like, now what should we work on? Because some goals will help fulfill the other goals, right? And so we want to make incremental change. And that's why I tell people, it's like, you don't have to quit that job tomorrow. Like, slow down. We're looking for incremental change is the best way to make change that's long lasting. It's not like a light switch, flip it on and off. It's like done. And so,
Well, there's nothing to be scared about. Basically, you could keep the same life while making these changes, right? That's good.
yeah,
I love that. I love that. I love the core belief thing.
yeah, the corporate,
Once you have that,
I think, this is stuff I think they should teach in school, and people should reevaluate their life throughout their life.
that's right.
What are your core, because a lot of times we talk about your gut instinct. I don't know if, I've obviously not done everything right in my life. I'm sure you probably haven't, or most listeners haven't. And in your gut, like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is probably not a good idea. I mean, I could even just use that with like dating. Like, there's people where you meet them and you're like, yeah, I should not be pursuing this person. It's like, there's not even like what they call quote unquote red flags. It's just like, this vibe is not good. Like, I
A
should,
car accident. Yeah, don't
yeah,
do it.
like
Don't do it.
my heart is going to get torn out and run over. And this person is just, yeah, this is not right for me. But sometimes we don't, we're skewed by beauty or fame or money or again, prestige or whatever it is. So our core beliefs will keep us on track of what's important. And it's all right to say, like, hey, I come from poverty. It's important that I have at least stability in life, that I have a good paycheck, and that I know I could pay my bills and the lights aren't going to be shut off. Because I got a lot of clients like that as well who grew up and, they were living in a trailer, literally with no electricity, like, and, parking in different places because their family was destitute. They didn't have, they couldn't afford an apartment, and they don't ever want to go back to that. Obviously one of their core beliefs and needs is going to be stability. That's going to be like super big on their list. So for them, when they look for a partner, the number one thing they're probably going to look for is stability. Hopefully, psychologically, sometimes they go exactly to the same thing that they came from because it's comfortable. It's comfortable, right? And that's a whole nother thing to deal with. But yeah, I'm really huge on it. And here's the thing about authenticity, going back to that, circling back to that, we cannot be vulnerable with people that we want to be vulnerable, that we need to be vulnerable, that we should be vulnerable with if we don't know who we are. Because how can you be vulnerable if you're not presenting as who you really are, or you don't even know who you are? So again, your core beliefs, what makes you authentic, what your narrative should be, and then you can be vulnerable. And I believe that the most beautiful relationships we have in the world are when we are vulnerable with each other. And I'm not
Right.
talking vulnerability like, man, I just met this girl. She's so awesome. I gave her my credit card. Like, dude, that's not vulnerable. That's stupid.
In other words, let's slow down. That's
Yeah,
another
like
slow down
that's
moment,
not
right?
vulnerable. I'm talking about tell her like your hopes and fears. I'm not talking about, share your credit card or your social security number. I'm
I
talking
bought her a
about,
car and put it on my credit. Got it. I
yeah,
got
like I'm talking about, let's be logical, but be vulnerable, right? Like, hey, this, or even as much as like, hey, this hurts my feelings, or hey, I really like this. Like, these are great things. Like, communication is number one, right? If we have healthy communication, including with ourselves, we don't make assumptions. And what do assumptions lead to? Resentment. So communication is definitely, I would say number one in any
it. I
kind of
love it.
relationship that you have.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. So mental health in Chicago. So tell me a little bit about what's going on there. I have a mental. I'm not a counselor, but I help run mental health clinics. So I'm curious, how's the industry in Chicago, or how's the mindset about counseling? Is it
People are pretty open to it. So one of the things that we have is there used to be a big stigma against, it used to be like, well, if you see a therapist, you've got some serious problems. Like you should,
Yeah, I remember
people think you
that.
need to be locked up or you're insane or whatever kind of, old language that people would use. And that's, nothing is further from the truth. I feel like we're in an industry now that is somewhere between um, coaching and in therapy, using therapy to help people. And some people, like, they can sell themselves however they need to get in the chair and sit down and share it. But I think people are more receptive, at least where I'm at in outside of Chicago. I'm in St. Charles, Illinois, and it's people are really pretty open to it. So I have
I
a very
think
diverse amount of clients. So I have people like living off of public aid all the way to people living in $1 million homes. And I see everyone in between, and, from teenagers to probably like 50, 60 years old. And almost all of them are receptive. That being said, some of the teenagers are being sent there because mom and dad are like, okay, we got to straighten this, whatever's going on. And they could be a little challenging at first because at first some of them don't want to be there. And, my job is then to build rapport with them. As you would realize in any industry, you got to build rapport, and where they can be vulnerable, where they can be comfortable, where they feel safe. And then I can work with them to try to help them and find out what the best use of their time on this planet can be used for, and give them, and hope is the other thing, right? It's instill hope
Time.
without lying to people. I always tell people, like, listen, I'll help you accomplish any dream, but if you want to be an astronaut, it's going to be a long shot, but I will support it, like.
I'll support you, but let's be,
but like, this is a very narrow, opportunity.
Right.
So let's get a plan B. We can do plan A, but let's also do plan B,
So it looks like helping humans is like one of your core beliefs, right? Because you're practicing and you're writing books to help people find what they're looking for. Why for you has that been important?
Well, I'll tell you, and it comes again when we talk about meaningfulness is not always a happy path. For me, I'll turn the clock back a little bit, and this will let people know my age a little more if they can't tell by looking at me. Back in 1997, I started the first online talent agency in Hollywood, which had actors, models, directors, designers, illustrators, everything you could think of. It was a one-stop shop. And my dream was to create this company and then have an IPO and, retire in the sunset, on the beach in Santa Monica or something, or Malibu. Well, that didn't work out. But anyways, I wound up staying there, and I worked for years, and I worked for a design studio, which was really awesome. We worked on record albums and marketing for bands. And I became a Grammy member. And then I started marketing for all 7 of the big studios. Now there's only 6, but at that time I was doing marketing for all 7. And then I had made so many friends over the years that I started traveling as a celebrity liaison. So I would go, like what I do now when I go on book tour, I have a publicist or I have an assistant with me. I used to travel with celebrities.
So you were a guardian. Okay.
So I would be their person, and I would be on shows like this and say, before the show would start, I'd say, like, they're not going to answer questions about this. Don't ask about this.
Don't ask.
So I was like the no person as well. So the celebrity never had to look bad or look like, any certain way. And and that was fun as well. So all was right in my world. And I was about to direct a documentary, my first time directing. And I had produced some movies, but I was looking to direct a documentary. So everything was right in my world. And this gets back to your question of why I'm doing what I'm doing. That week I signed on the dotted line to direct this movie. I flew out, got all the contracts signed by the people I needed who were going to be in the documentary, and my son took his life. So my teenage son took his life and just set me in a spiral. And I tried to go work on the film. I would break down sometimes in the hotel when I was on the road and just sob. And I was like, I need to take a break. I can't do this right now. So I wound up, really depressed. I didn't use drugs or alcohol or anything like that. It's just not my thing. I also feel like for me, I wanted to punish myself that I did something wrong or missed something. So I wanted to feel the pain, like, because I felt I deserved it.
Of course.
But this dragged on for about almost 2 years. And then I wasn't really working. I was just really disappeared from the scene. And my sister was begging me to go to a group of people who lost people to suicide, and I begrudgingly went. So I didn't particularly like it for myself, but what I did like is I liked that people gravitated towards me and were like, oh, you made me feel better with your story, or you made me laugh in a time where I can't stop crying. And I was like, well, that kind of feels good. And they said, well, at least come back for a couple of sessions before you make a decision if you're going to not join the group. And I did, and people gravitated towards me. And then one day, someone went up to me and said, you should be a therapist. And I was like, I'm a Hollywood guy. Like, no, I'm not working right now, but in my heart, I'm a Hollywood creative, entertainment industry guy. Like, I'm going to make my money around that industry somehow. And I couldn't get that out of my head. And I couldn't get the idea of how good it made me feel to help other people. So the next day, I just, again, went to Google, and this should be just an ad for Google. They should be paying you some money for the advertisement. But I went there and I searched what is required to become a therapist. And I already had my bachelor's. So I looked, and I looked at different programs at USC and around the country. And I didn't realize that we had one of the biggest schools of social work and psychology in the country right in my hometown. And it's like 100-and-some-year-old school. I was like, where is this school? I've never seen it. They're like, oh, it's tucked back behind this old neighborhood. I was like, I didn't even know this existed. Within a week, I signed up. I just couldn't get it off my mind. And I was like, and so this, to get more direct to answer your question, is I felt that the best use of my time at this point would be to help other people through tragedy. And the only way I could try to make something positive out of losing my son would be to save another life, to save other lives, to save people, to not have to suffer so much through the grieving process if they did lose somebody, to help people with depression and anxiety and all these other things that people are struggling with. And I'm glad I did. It's been the most rewarding part of my life. I mean, yeah, it was fun to be on the red carpet at award shows, high-fiving people and hanging out at all these celebrity parties. But I think this is right now is like the best use of my time. Like, I really feel like, and why? Because it's no longer just about me. It's about other people, right? And then talk about transcending time is, now I'm touching other lives, hopefully in a really positive way. And how many lives is that going to affect in a positive way, right? So for me, that's why. And then the writing the books came about because there was still that creative part of me was like, well, I
Yeah, of
still miss some
course.
creativity. I still need a little spotlight. Give me a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot, but I still, so there's still that. But the other thing is, really, for writing books is, for me, it's just an opportunity to reach a broader audience. Like, for instance, right now we're talking about the book. Like, if I just had the clinic, we wouldn't be talking, because there's a million clinics and you wouldn't be able to find me and I wouldn't stand out. But this gives a lot of opportunity for that, and people to help people, and for the people to learn about, like, hopefully today, authenticity, and about vulnerability, and about why meaningfulness is so important, and not to expect the journey to be perfect. And I think that's the other thing with people and with their narratives is, we have this idea that we should get from point A to point B and it should just be smooth sailing. And that's not life, right? It's like, sometimes it's like a heartbeat. It's just up, down, up, down, up, down. And we got to ride that, right? So that's why I do it. I love helping people. The best use of my time. I love being on shows like this where I
Worry,
could talk about stuff that's important and fun, and have fun with it, right? Like, I
worry.
don't want to do all doom and gloom, and, I want to give people hope, and know they can
But
change their lives.
I mean, this is actually a really powerful story. I mean, it's for you to not only get through your loss and the grief, but actually do something about it and help someone else. I mean, I commend you for that. That's huge. So if someone, which I can't imagine the pain that you went through. I have kids and I can't imagine that. So, but there are people out there where it happens, right? So what can you tell them from the position of their pain right now for them to get that hope to keep pushing? Because look, you're here, you did something great with your life, you used it as a purpose, it still worked out. What would you tell them?
One is they have to let go of the guilt. I think the number one thing that holds people in the past and makes them suffer is the guilt. We all think as parents that, well, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but when my son was struggling, and it was a very short time, and honestly, I didn't study psychology at the time. I thought it was teen angst. I mean, look at a teenager. Like, sometimes people bring their kids to the clinic, like, you got to help Johnny. He's got problems. And then I look at Johnny and I'm like, he's a teen. He's just being a teen. Like I've done assessments, I've done anxiety screenings, I've done depression screenings. I've talked to this kid. He's a kid, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just a teen, right? Like, this is just being a teenager. You're going through changes in your life. But for parents or spouses or anyone who's lost someone, it's a lot of times that guilt can keep us. So you talk about, losing your direction or your narrative a lot of times then becomes a victim of something, a victim of this experience, or that you're a widow, or I'm a survivor, a parent of survivor of suicide. And it's like, I don't want to be defined by that. I don't want, I think it was great. It was in a sense that I was able to do something positive from it, but I don't want the sorrow and the pain to define my life.
Got it.
I used it to catapult myself to somewhere else. And I would tell people the same thing as like, be kind to yourself, give yourself grace. This is, how would you treat a best friend, and treat yourself the same way? Because often when we lose somebody to suicide, there's such guilt with that and shame sometimes. And people, that's it. That's the rest of their life. And that's when I go back to that group. When I was at the suicide group, I looked around the room and this one person was there for 20 years. One person was there for 15 years. One person was there for 8 years. One person was there for 27 years. One person was there for 3 years. And I thought, I do not want to spend the rest of my life sitting in this group. Now, that, no offense to them,
No, I know.
everyone has the right to grieve the way they want to grieve, but it would be such a waste of my life if all I did was be the survivor of my son's suicide. And that's all I was defined as. Like, I'd like to think that I have more to offer the world. And again, use that and empower myself to do something else. And it's not easy. So what I'm not doing is telling people right now who are listening, who are recently suffering from that or have in recent times, I'm not at all saying it's easy, or look at me, you pull your bootstraps up. No, like, you take your time, you do what's right for you. There is no timeline. Your timeline could be longer than mine. It could be shorter than mine. It's going to be what it's going to be. But I do say, speak to somebody, because often the other thing with suicide is we don't talk to our families about it, because it just makes them suffer. They're
Feels
suffering
like
more.
you can.
So for me, I'm like, I don't want to talk to my sister or my mother, who I was closest to, or my brother. Like, I can see the pain. Like, when I would bring it up, I could see the pain in their eyes. They start welling up with tears, or I could just see it in their face. Like, I don't want to traumatize them anymore. So seek out a professional if you can. It will really help you assess, what your needs are, get you on a timeline, and just work with you through the grieving process, because you have to grieve, and everyone has to grieve in their own way and at their own pace. So I'd say that's
I
number
love
one.
that.
Yeah. Just, and,
Love it.
don't beat yourself up. The shoulda, woulda, coulda is terrible. And, depression lives in the past. Then we can get stuck in that past, and then we can't move forward if our feet are in the past.
Well, I'm glad you got back up, and I'm very happy you're fighting, because I know how important counseling really is, right? About suicide. If you're talking to someone that's going through that, because there's a stigma to that, right? As well, sharing that you're having these thoughts. What would you tell them right now if they're hearing you and they're thinking about suicide? Because that's very important.
Well, being a therapist, the three things I have to ask is: one, do you have a plan? Two, do you have intent? Three, do you have means? If you have plan or intent, dial 911, because there's not enough time. Like, you need to get somewhere now, because
Yeah.
if you already have plan and intent, that's time to go to the hospital, take a break, get evaluated, that kind of stuff. If they don't have plan or intent, but they have what's called suicide ideation, which is very normal, which I had as well after losing my son, even though I was anti-suicide because of what I just went through and I seen how it damaged my family. So I still had this, which was completely frustrating, is these ideas of like, I'd be better off not being alive, be better off if I got hit by a car or if someone just killed me. So that's not any plan or intent, but that is, really harmful thinking pattern. And it can really just continue to depress a person, as well as cause anxiety, because you're like, when's this horrendous thought going to come back into my head?
Right.
And sometimes we can actually see the methods that we're going to use. So for people like that, I say, again, talk to someone. Again, I try to instill hope. First, I want to make sure they're stable. Again, like, no intent or
Of
plan.
course.
I want to come up with coping mechanisms. What can help you cope when these come up? Is journaling help? Does seeking out a friend help, or friend or loved one? Even there's other, even something as simple as like reading a book if they can. Some people can't concentrate because the suicide ideation is so strong, but play a video game, put on a happy movie, listen to positive music, put on a happy, uplifting podcast, but definitely seek help because it's not something you should go through alone. And the other thing is, I'm not one to push medication, but there are times where people are chemically imbalanced, and medication along with therapy is really great. So I think that's important for people to also not to have a stigma with that if you have to take something. And I'll just say on the show, like, I'm not afraid to tell people, like I did. I went on an SSRI when I lost my son. I was having massive panic attacks. I was in just terrible health. It was a
Actually,
miserable experience. And I kept not wanting to take it, even though the doctor said, just take it, like it's fine. And millions of people have taken it. It'll really help you balance. You have, um, and then, and I thought, well, no, because that officially makes me crazy if I take it.
that's it. That's there goes the
That was
signal.
my, again, I didn't study psychology at that time. I was like, no, that officially makes me, in the sick basket. There's something wrong with me. If I don't take medicine, then I'm not officially sick. And it's like,
Yeah, it's not happening.
yeah, so I got over that and I took it, and I was so grateful because I went from these horrendous panic attacks, and I haven't had a panic attack in a decade. I mean,
Please.
and not that my life is perfect. So I was like, oh, why was I fighting this so much?
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing about your son. I got to give it to you. It's a lot of courage to even be able to speak about it. I wouldn't know. So one of the things you talked about was consumerism, right?
Yeah.
How do you and how do you escape that? Because that is a big deal, right? Everything you're talking about, it's shaped by all of these things that we see each and every day. Social media, especially, like you said, happiness. You see it in all these pictures, right? And then you try to get to this. So how do we battle that within ourselves to not fall into the trap of looking at these things as important?
Well, again, I'm a big person with lists, so you can do this in your mind. You can do it on paper. What is the pros and cons of me consuming this item, especially like big things, like because
And
it's I'm not talking about going to get just a sandwich somewhere or you need new hand towels for your house. Well, if you need them, you need
no,
them, right?
I've
I know it. We're talking about people who are like every week they got to go out and buy a new clothing outfit or new shoes or a new handbag, or they got to get that fancy car, or they got to get a bigger house than they could probably afford or actually even need, right? So do a pros and cons list. What does this add to your life? What is it going to subtract from your life? And the other thing is, again, I like to tell people is like everything you purchase cost you some of your life.
that's right.
Like how much time did it take for you to earn the money, or will it take you to earn the money to pay for this? Is that really a fair use of your life? Because when all is said and done, you know, when we're on our deathbed, I don't think anyone ever says, I wish I could have put in more overtime. I really wish I could have worked harder.
Yeah,
Damn,
a little bit more.
I wish I was a little farther in credit card debt. That would have
I
been
could have gone in
awesome.
on Saturday. Yeah,
Well,
you're
maybe
right.
that would be fun to stick it to the credit card companies, but I'm not telling people to do that. But maybe that would be all right if you got 2 weeks to live, just like rack those cards to the
Yeah, think
max.
things out.
Yeah, it's like I'm getting, it's getting the best. I'm gonna have like literally get the Concorde to fly over some chocolate from
For
Europe.
no reason. Yeah.
Yeah, just like express. I need like 1 hour delivery or something or whatever they can the fastest time they could possibly get here. But no, it's look at that there is a cost to it. Again, think about the hedonic treadmill that you're going to go back to your baseline. Just think about the past. So um, remember that like you've done this 8 times before and there's been no relief. There's been no change. You're not having a more meaningful life by consuming more stuff. Now, there are things I think, so I'm not anti-purchasing every, good or service. Again, again, I'll just use the gym because I'm just started at the gym again.
It's in the mind.
So it's, yeah, it's right there. And it's just like, I think I pay like $24 a month. Like this is the best, use of my money that I can because I get, access 7 days a week, to this gym. And, it's a price I can afford and it's great for my health. So that is the pros list is incredible. The cons is $24. Well, what is that?
But what's
That's
that? Yeah, you
nothing,
would.
right? That's you. I mean, what's that? Like 2 sandwiches at a restaurant nowadays? Like I can afford that. Like, But it's the bigger things. It's getting caught into that, again, the hedonic treadmill where you're just constantly trying to buy, you get the dopamine rush, and then it seizes. And I'm not knocking dopamine. I think it's a great thing. There's a really positive things for that as well. But to realize that we are getting these little hits of dopamine, and when we buy stuff and we consume stuff, especially if it's like we're looking at other people. So that goes back to, the keeping up with the Joneses, is realizing, why am I? Why? Yeah, why am I doing this, right? Why am I doing this? So if you can ask yourself that, like, why do I need this? Why am I doing this? And if it's out of boredom, or it's out of, frustration, or again, like you just want that dope, so you go out and shop, there's a cost to that, and try to realize what that cost is. And for me, it's, I'm pretty simple. You can see, well, what you can see, I'm all in black. I'm in.
And I still shop at the thrift stores, and I don't know. It's that I'm not
Yeah.
in consumerism. So I was looking, the edge of her mind. What's that? I just saw it on that screen. What is that?
Well, that's just a movie that I helped co-produce. So basically, I'm very hands-off on those projects, in the sense of it's just trying to help generate, get investors and stuff in these films. For me, the books are my main focus, but I do have a documentary that the one I talked about before. So the rights were given back to me for the film that I started when I lost my son. And that's something I'm really looking forward to working on in the future. But right now, it's all about psychotherapy. It's all about the books. And I
So
have
how do
two.
they get the books? Let's talk about how people can get all the books, and talk anything you want to say about. I know you have a few books. Anything you want
Yeah,
to say?
so Amazon is the best way to get it. And just go to Amazon.com, type in my name, Shawn Nowotnik, which I'm sure you'll post a beautiful link somewhere on there, or
Everywhere,
yeah,
everywhere I can.
everywhere. So they can just follow the link. I have 4 books out. The first 2 were not written by me. They're compiled by me, and they're quote books, which were created originally just for my group therapy. So it's all positive affirmations and positive quotes to start conversations about things around mental health. And I found that using this was a great tool for getting a group that didn't want to talk or didn't want to share, to say, like, who knows this quote, or what does it make you feel? And it always sparked conversation. So I compiled all the quotes that I used in group therapy. I think I did 1,000 groups before.
1,000 groups? Is that what you?
Yeah, probably I did probably like 1,000 groups already now. Yeah.
Wait, how long you've been a counselor for?
7 years plus 2 years of internship. So I was doing multiple groups a day, 3 to 5 times a week. So yeah, so I started all in group therapy and I loved it. But then I was like, I knew I would eventually wanted to get to individual therapy to really, because there were so many things that came up in group where I was like, wow, I wish I could spend more time with this person, like individually. But
God.
they were assigned to someone else for their individual therapy and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so those first 2 books, which is Louder Than Bombs. And then I realized when I finished Louder Than Bombs, like everything that I finish in life, I critique it and I go, crud, every quote in here is by a man. And I didn't realize that,
You
because
didn't
I just picked the quotes that meant something to me and worked in therapy.
network can be up.
So then I came out with a second book called Mighty Words from Mighty Women, and that's all female quotes. Because I had to like, I was like, well, I felt that there was an injustice done, right? I wasn't,
no, good.
I'm not woke at all, but I'm like, just felt like, God, there's so many great quotes from all these people. And so I put that together, and then that was, really successful. And a lot of teachers use it, and a lot of other therapists use it in group therapy. People use it, just everyday people, just something to look at a quote every day. And then my third book is Habits of Successful People, which is loosely based on my time in Hollywood. And that's loosely based, I say, because it's not a story about Hollywood. It's 48 habits that if you add any of these habits to your life, you will improve your life. So it's everything from using SMART goals to eating better to all different mental health things. But the cool thing about it is I tied in a quote from all these different celebrities and historic figures, as well as people I met in the business world that were really successful. So I was able to, while I was in Hollywood, meet with Sir Richard Branson and meet Sir Paul McCartney and
That
talk to Steven Spielberg. And
amazing.
I would ask these people, like, what is your habit of success, or what drives you, or whatever. And I used to write all this down on little note cards and keep it in my jacket. So when I was ready to do the book, I had all these direct quotes, from these people who are really successful. And I decided to share it with everyone.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a really fun book, and it's in micro chapters. So the cool thing is it's like 2 to 3 pages per chapter. Just like, it's real short and sweet. Do ABC and you'll get some results. You'll get some results. That was really fun. So that's, very much a self-help book as well. And then now I'm doing Fuck Happiness, and
as much as you say it,
should I not said that out loud, or I'm
I
allowed to
love
swear
it.
on
I
here?
love
Okay.
it.
Yeah, because I got it. Sometimes I'm on
about?
some shows and they're like, we're not even going to say the title of the book. I'm like, how are we supposed to talk about it? They're like, we're not even going to say F happiness. We're just going to say it's the search for meaning. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's going to be interesting.
No.
So I try not to even reference
No,
it,
it's
but
good. It's good.
but I like this book, and what I like about it is it's funny and snarky. It's really poking fun at happiness, but it also shares the psychological importance of things like meaningfulness, vulnerability, finding what your narrative is. If I have one regret about the book, and I shouldn't say this because I'm trying to sell books, is I feel I was a little heavy-handed where I beat people over the head. So if you don't get the message at the end of the book that it's about authenticity to find meaningfulness, then I did something wrong, because I literally pounded it in your head for 12 chapters. So, I had a few friends tell me, they're like, we get it, Shawn. By chapter 8, we got it. I was like, well, it's already out there, so there's nothing I can do. I just really want to make sure no one walks away, because there's sometimes people read books and they're like, so I kind of get it and I kind of don't. I'm like, they're gonna get it.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I love the idea of it. I really, really do, for many reasons, including, that quest for happiness. I stopped looking for the happiness a long time ago. I didn't know, now that I speak to you, I see how that's helped me get happy. So thank you for that. Thank you for what you do. You're powerful, man. I'm telling you, just in the fact that you were able to go through, before we spoke, I didn't know that. So it's a very powerful thing that takes such a hard time in your life and turn it into something that helps people. And it does. Counseling is so important. And I'm proud of you for doing that. Are you proud of yourself for doing that?
Oh yeah, I'm very I won't use the word happy, but I'm living a very meaningful life.
You can't now.
I can't. I know, it's so funny because I told someone the other day, I said, we were talking about something. I said, that makes me happy. And they're like, what? You said, why? You said happy. I was like, what? I don't think I did. Did you
You have to put that out of your vocabulary.
I slipped one time in the last year. I've actually used the word happy, unless I was talking against it, but it happens.
Well, I am very, very proud that you joined me and shared your story. I'm very happy that you have these. Well, wait, not happy. I'm very glad about what you're doing and the books that are out there. And I'm very grateful that you joined me. So,
well, I'm grateful for being here. This was a lot of fun. You have great energy. I like what you're doing. I think it's important, what you're doing, and it gives me an opportunity, and hopefully the listeners an opportunity to get different perspectives from different people, and hopefully we can change some lives and improve their lives. And again, if it's just an incremental change in the right direction, I'm happy with that. So
nice. I love it, love it, love it. Please continue what you're doing. Do not stop. And by meeting you today, I know you never will. That is your meaning. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and I will consider you a friend moving here on out.
Yes, do it. I'm here whenever you need. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Repeat after me. I am powerful.
I am powerful.